across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk, the nation's favourite station. I'm your host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I will be with you for 3 solid hours of fast-breaking news, acerbic views and top-quality debate. Get involved, have your say, and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I absolutely guarantee I will play your message out. It's Monday, February the 17th. Here's what's coming up. As Corporal Keir goes all military and pledges to put British military boots on the ground in Ukraine, why is our weird little leader suddenly styling himself as Donald Trump's best friend in Europe? Hey Keir, did you listen to J.D. Vance's speech about weak European leaders and their disgraceful assaults on free speech? It was aimed directly at you. In what way does an enemy of free speech prepared to lie to the nation and call those with whom he disagrees far-right thugs believe that his kind of socialist tyranny makes him a special pal of President Trump? Hey, Keir, he thinks the same about you as he does the rest of those cowering EU losers who got that magnificent dressing down from the excellent Vice President that you and them and the Brussels gang are all a bunch of woke tosspots. Simple as that. Does the President have a point, do you think, folks? 0344 499 1000. And here's exactly why Trump and Vance have such contempt for the British Prime Minister and his government. Because, among his many other crimes against common sense, Starmer presides over ludicrous foreign aid generosity that sends money to check on the health of shrimps in Bangladesh, to Congo for 9.5 million quid's worth of accountability and inclusion, whatever that means, a gender disinformation conference in Kenya, to Iraq for a 5 million quid feminist funding project, and electric Porsches to the pricey tune of £500,000 quid for Albania's prisons. And so much more. In other news, after 240 illegals crossed the channel on Saturday, two-tier Keir has sailed into the record books with more than 25,000 migrants pitching up on Britain's south coast since Labour came to power on July the 5th. Brilliant, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. Do you think Keir and Calamity Cooper, the hopeless Home Secretary, have got any idea how to cure this crisis, to solve the migrant crisis? 0344 499 1000. From my point of view, the answer is an emphatic no. Plus tonight, Rachel from Accounts insists that no one mentioned the alleged expenses scandal she was said to be at the centre of when she pretends she was an economist at HBOS Bank from 2006 to 2009. The Chancellor says she was never even spoken to, despite accusations that she and other managers funded a luxury lifestyle on their expense accounts. Is this true? Or another one of Rachel Robber Reeves' trademark career lies. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. How do you tell if Rachel's lying? Her lips move. Also tonight, Ben Habib joins me in an hour or so to discuss the commodity that J.D. Vance charges that the EU's despots have dispensed with: freedom. Plus, more crazy decisions by Britain's left-wing tribunal judges. The amateur art class warned to stop using nude models in what critics are saying represents a depressing return to repressive Victorian prudishness. Why are we getting like this again? And finally, Meghan's limelight-hogging antics at the Invictus Games continue to cause consternation. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now at Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday night together. And since it's Monday, I am joined, as always, by my Monday mate, my fellow Talk presenter, of course, also political commentator, Russell Quirk. Welcome, Russell.
Good evening. Another Monday, another week of political nonsense and shenanigans.
Yeah, well, I tell you something. So Keir Starmer today, right, talking about, I'll put boats on the ground, put Ukraine peacekeeping force and all this kind of stuff. Well, I mean, he's going ahead a bit, isn't he? I mean, there's no peace yet. Why is he committing us to this already when no peace talks have even started? Well, they've just about started in Saudi Arabia, but nothing solid yet. And has he not listened to Lord Dannatt, the former chief of the army, various other military experts? You haven't got enough people. We haven't got enough resources. You can't commit the British Army to putting boots on the ground in Ukraine when you haven't got enough soldiers. It's very, very strange. He is not Donald Trump's friends, and he doesn't have the resources to commit us to basically going in on the ground in Ukraine. Very, very strange. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk first about exactly why J.D. Vance brilliantly pointed the finger at European leaders, cowering, useless EU leaders as they sat there in this hall in Munich for the security conference, the International Security Conference. They were expecting from the Vice President a standard issue, where we stand on Ukraine, we'll work together with our European partners. No, what he did instead was he turned around and said, look, you don't share our values. You are not operating according to the American way. You are suppressing freedom of speech. You are oppressing freedom of expression for your woke politics, and America won't put up with it. What did he mean? Well, it emerged today, courtesy of our colleagues at the Sun newspaper, that we spend £15 billion a year on foreign aid. A lot of people think that given our dire economic straits, given that millions and millions of Brits are struggling in the cost of living crisis, that all this generosity abroad is inappropriate, that we should be spending this money on us, or the government should be spending the money on British people, you know, not Ethiopians, not Somalians, and so on and so forth. So today, it emerged that, among other things, we're sending to Colombia, I do believe. We're sending money for poetry classes there. We send £15 billion a year every year abroad. Along the way, we've handed £114 million to the world's largest democracy and industrial superpower with its own space program, India. We sent £9.5 million to Congo for accountability and inclusion, whatever the hell that means. We sent £5 million to Iraq on a transforming feminist funding project. Again, what does that mean? My personal favourite, £500,000 to Albania so that it could buy electric Porsches for its prison system. I can't quite get my head around that, but that's where that £500,000 quid. £110,000 on a gender disinformation conference in Kenya. £233,000 on mental health research in Colombia. And, good one, this one, £133,000 to spend on shrimp health in Bangladesh. Now, the thing is, Russell, all of these projects, right, I mean, I'm not against the concept of a big economy like ours, a rich economy trying to help some of the developing nations, although I think we certainly should be cutting back on it in these present financial circumstances we all find ourselves in. But I'm not against the principle. But if you look at them, they're all left-wing and woke. It's all inclusion, poetry, feminism. Yeah. It's all of that. It's all woke claptrap that our money is being sent abroad on. By the way, this year, let's not forget that also we have 11.6 billion extra pounds being sent abroad by our cash-strapped government for green policies, green projects,
foreign climate aid
in developing countries. So this year we're spending actually £27 billion abroad, always for left-wing, green wokery.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of things going on here. I think we've got the foreign aid budget, which when parliamentarians talk about it, it's talked about as essential in terms of us helping, our cousins, our partners overseas, whether it's to help them understand democracy or, how elections should work and so on. And particularly those politicians on the left bang on about how important this is. I mean, don't forget also, we've recently sent £50 million to African countries to kind of help them understand how to train their people so that they are more skilled, so that they don't feel that they need to jump in a dinghy and come across the channel to Britain. I mean, pointless, pie in the sky, fantastical waste. So you got all that. I think what is happening
the entire
here,
principle that the foreign aid philosophy rests on is that if you invest in making life better for people in developing countries, they won't leave those countries and come to Britain. I mean, there's something in that, but that is nebulous to the point of vanishing.
But £50 million to educate the entire subcontinent of Africa so that they don't come across here seeking a better life. It also confirms, as we've been saying on this channel for years, that most of the people coming across the channel in small boats, they are not asylum seekers, they are economic migrants, and that kind of proves the point. But I think what we have here also, as we've seen in the US, because of what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing with Doge, we are absolutely seeing a disconnect between the politicians and their virtue signalling in terms of that we need to be funding aid across the world to the tune of 10-15 billion quid, and then those that are actually enacting where that money goes, which, as ever, is the woke, left-leaning, activist civil servants that look at some of these projects and think, well, this is a good idea. We should be, helping to promote transgenderism in Syria. We should be making sure that we've got some kind of program that encourages drag acts to teach children in Colombia. It's the epitome of what is happening in the US, which is now being exposed by way of Musk and co. And it shows two things. First of all, that disconnect and the woke virtual signalling. But also the other wider point, Kevin, is, I think, controversial point this, but probably true. Now we know how politicians, particularly in America, are so rich, because I bet some of this money doesn't reach these destinations. It doesn't actually get to these ridiculous sources. It actually ends up in the pockets of politicians. I won't mention any names, and I'm talking about the US in particular.
That's what Elon Musk claims.
But how can you have a congressman or a deputy speaker of the Senate on $150,000 that goes into politics in the 1980s with nothing, all of a sudden now, without actually having any business or any financial connection to an actual business or company entity, they come out of politics at the age of 60 or 70 worth $25 million. How do we think that happens?
Yeah, well, I think it's incumbent upon Elon Musk to prove it. I mean, he's pointing a lot of fingers. He better prove it. You can't just go around saying everybody who works for USAID is a crook and not prove it. I mean, he basically is saying, you're quite right, that people on salaries of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year seem to be living, who work for USAID, the American foreign aid project, seem to be living in multi-million pound houses, dollar houses, and seem to have accrued multi-million dollar fortunes, which certainly is worth looking into, but he's got to bloody well prove it. He's so interested to find out about this, and I'm not aware of anyone here who works for Britain's foreign aid project making themselves rich either.
No, but what about the recipients?
I don't really care about the people who work for foreign aid here in America. What I care about is the ludicrous targets that we're aiming our money at. As I said, shrimp health in Bangladesh, inclusion in Congo, and so on and so forth. A poetry course.
Did you see this one, Kev?
Colombia.
Preventing gender-based disinformation in Kenya.
Yeah, that's I've said that one. That's the conference. Yeah. They're going to spend several £100,000 on that. So it's always woke. It's always gender misinformation. You know, sex change. America, as Elon Musk drives a fabulous truck through their foreign aid system, they discovered, among other things, that America sent $2 million to Guatemala for sex change surgery, and also the legendary $50 million worth of condoms to Gaza. So that what they do is they just take our money and just spray it around the world, but it's always on politically charged projects. You know, it's never sort of let's help people get a new bus route, or let's help them install some water irrigation systems or cleansing systems. It's always like woke gender disinformation conferences and all that. So what we're talking about is actually trying to export the pathetic, weak wokery that European leaders stand for, that J.D. Vance tore them off a strip about on Friday, right?
Yeah, and then look, you touched on it in terms of the foreign climate aid, this £12 billion that's being sent abroad to help other countries understand the perils of the climate emergency, so-called. But that brings us to another point, doesn't it, that sits in parallel with this, which is the crazy woke quest for net zero. I was reading earlier on, the Committee on Climate Change says now that the quest for net zero, all told, is costing the British taxpayer £50 billion each year. If you add it all up, 50 billion, all the subsidies, all the ridiculousness around infrastructure, and including obviously the money that we're sending abroad, carbon capture, of course, which is 22 billion over a number of years. So the total that the people listening to this show now are having to dig into their pockets for on an annual basis to achieve this absolutely pointless target of net zero, £50 billion, £50,000 million a year.
I'm surprised it's that little. I mean, Ed Miliband is going to bust this country. He's going to break this country if that idiot Starmer allows him to continue like this, and I wouldn't put it past Starmer to allow him to continue like this. But we are in big trouble, big trouble, because of this obsession with net zero, as Russell alludes to. No one quite knows even what it is. And in so much as we do know what it is, no one's going to ever achieve it. Ed Miliband has already railed back from it. So.
Well, the planet's not going to, is it?
Yeah, no.
But you know, the reason I bring it up is when we add up all of this pointless virtue signalling that you've very well and articulated just now, in terms of all of the wokeness, all of the ridiculous amounts of money that are going to silly causes. But when you add it all up and the net zero stuff, it's £80 billion a year. So the virtue signalling, the foreign aid, and the net zero stuff, £80 billion.
It's just insanity. We have a government that has no common sense, that is still, stuck to its ideological insanity.
But you know, it's 10% of our national budget. 10% of all of the money that this government spends is going on this worthless, nonsensical claptrap. 10%. 10% of our tax pounds being literally flushed down the toilet.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to know why. Well, let me know what you think about what we're spending money on. It is just as mad and as crazy as Elon Musk discovered in Washington. The money they were wasting was just astronomical, and so are we. So this year, as I said earlier, we usually send £15 billion abroad. I think we should look at that. What about all those poor old grannies who are freezing to death because we saved £1.4 billion by not giving them their winter fuel allowance? I mean, we're really saying it's more important to send £27 billion abroad for green projects and gender disinformation conferences, shrimp health in Bangladesh. We're saying that is more important than British pensioners freezing to death because we're not going to pay for their heating anymore. What do you reckon? 03444991000. And when we come back, we'll talk about specifically the migrant crisis. We'll get to Mr. Starmer Keir's little delusions about the key role he's going to play in the peace in Ukraine, the alleged peace in Ukraine. We'll get to that in a little while. It's absolute fantasy. It's absolute fantasy. It's getting very worried. This guy lives in a world of his own that isn't the same as the rest of us, I'll tell you that. But we'll talk about the actual migrant crisis next, because 240 more came across on Saturday. Isn't that wonderful? So that next, stay tuned.
We need to recognize that this is a very serious moment for the security of Europe. The United States is looking like it's stepping back from NATO in its commitment to help support peace in Europe, and that is very serious indeed. I think it represents extraordinary naivety on the part of President Trump, and the rest of his team. And I'd like to remind your readers that I think it's your viewers that I think it is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the migrant crisis, because quietly last week, 240 came across on Saturday. And already that week, anyway, the total last week, that brought the total last week to about 404, over 400 in the middle of the winter, when the weather's bad and numbers are supposed to be small. So Keir Starmer has now presided, since he came to power on July the 5th, in the time frame, a record 25,000 small boat arrivals since he came to power, July the 5th. So after impetuously axing the £700 million Rwanda scheme, Labour has no deterrence. Their smash the gangs strategy is absolutely not working, mainly on account of they haven't smashed a single people smuggling gang, not a single one. And still they come, and the weather's starting to get better. This is going to get worse and worse and worse. This is going to be the worst year on record, and this government has got no deterrence and is doing nothing whatsoever about it except headline chasing. The Border Security Command. We gave these people at the Border Security Command £175 million worth of high-tech equipment. We hired a guy called Martin Hewitt, used to be a top copper, for 200 grand a year. This has been in operation since July. Nothing. Smashing the gangs won't work anyway, but worth noting, if they smashed since July the 5th, 100 people smuggling gangs, we would still have the crisis because the migrants are still coming. But it's worth noting that actually the number of people smuggling gangs they've smashed is zero, zilch, not a single one. So still they come, and nothing's going to stop them. We don't have deterrence, do we, Russell? We have encouragements. We offer them free hotels, free food, free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, free everything. It is ludicrous.
There will be 50,000 undocumented migrants on small boats landing on the shores of Britain this year. Last year it was about 40,000. I predict this year it will be about 50,000. If they all came at the same time, and I know we've said this before, but it's worth repeating, we would call it, guess what, an invasion. But because there's only 200 or 300 a day, couple of thousand a week, we don't call it that. But
I do.
It is an invasion.
I do.
Particularly as we
Who doesn't call it an invasion?
Well, no, with the left for a start.
Well, yeah, I call it an invasion.
I call it an invasion.
They say that's the language we can't use. Well, it's
far right, apparently.
If we want to use that language, we will.
It is an invasion, particularly when they've got their hands out, particularly when they are, some of them, coming here to cause us harm, and when most of them are anonymous and undocumented. But I have to say, Kev, I've got to take issue with you. You're being very unfair about Keir Starmer smashing the gangs. He has smashed 2 gangs, albeit one of them was a bloke on a beach in Bodrum selling lilos.
So that's not a gang.
And then there was another one today that I heard on the news, a guy with a shed in Rochester that has been convicted apparently because he was harbouring one boat that he was apparently renting out to gangs. I'm saying this tongue in cheek. But they are the only 2 people in 8 months that can ever be loosely and not loosely constituted as gangs that Keir Starmer has smashed. It's pathetic.
Yeah, and just to get this in context, folks, this is what it's costing you. This is a snapshot. So last week, in the great scheme of things, 404 coming over. There are 2, 3, 4 days where nobody came over, but it was one day where I think about 163 came over. One day only about 4 made it, but drips and drabs all week. So the total last week was 404 came across illegally to be welcomed into the warm embrace of sucker Britain as we give them everything they've ever dreamed of. Those 404 migrants over the next year, because trust me, they will all be here, not just for the next year, they'll be here for at least 10 years, and that's only talking about the ones that are finally rejected. There won't be many of them. Most of them can rest assured they are now here in Britain, and we let about 75% of all asylum seekers stay, so they'll almost certainly stay. So last week, 404, quite a light week for illegal crossings across the Channel from France to Britain. Those 404 migrants will cost you, me, Russell, all British taxpayers over the next year. Ready? £16,160,000 for the next year. 16. So 1 week's worth, light week, 16 million. There will be weeks coming up in the spring and the summer where 2,000 will come across. So that will be, you'll be talking there about, 60 million worth of migrants coming over in a single week. The cost, Russell, is astronomical.
Well, and I hate to do this, but if we then extend that, there was a study that was done, I think it was in Denmark, which looked at the total lifetime cost of an illegal migrant coming into whichever country in Europe. It's pretty much the same everywhere. And the lifetime cost of an illegal migrant is £400,000. So your 404 just now, multiply that by 400,000, that's 161.6 £1 million just in 1 week that the taxpayer is footing the bill for.
Some of them may become very, very useful citizens.
Well, there's lots of engineers and doctors, of course. On
they're all engineers, doctors, highly qualified. God knows what, computer scientists.
Yeah.
They're not, mostly. They're nearly all just young blokes who want to get a job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not blaming them, but they're economic migrants. They're not escaping war, and they're costing us a fortune. We've got about 100,000 asylum seekers here at the moment. Our annual bill is around about 10, 11 billion pounds just to maintain them. And weirdly, Russell, Calamity Cooper, the hapless Home Secretary, she's trying to sort of change the goalpost. They no longer seem to be saying we're going to solve this crisis, we're going to stop the migrants. They're basically saying we're going to get them out of hotels and put them into much cheaper accommodation, detention centres, or shall we say accommodation centres, because they're not ever detained. Well, that's not what we're asking. And in any case, guess what? While they're busy saying we're going to get these migrants out of these expensive hotels and get them into cheaper accommodation centres, guess what they're busy doing? They have been busy since January the 1st, commandeering more and more, drum roll, hotels.
Yeah.
So they're saying they're going to get these migrants out of the hotels, but actually they're commandeering more hotels, so more and more of these migrants who are coming over day in, day out are being put into hotels at great cost to us. As I say, each one of them costs us on average £40,000 a year. £40,000. So you do the maths, as they say in America, the math. It is astronomical, and this government is doing nothing about it. Its policy now, Mark Russell, seems to be, let's see if we can talk about Ukraine, let's see if we can talk about Donald Trump, let's see if we can talk about anything except the migrant crisis. Let's try and pretend it's not happening.
Yes, distraction tactics and gaslighting, of course. And obviously the reason that Yvette Cooper wants to be seen to be solving the problem of migrants in hotels is because that was one of the things that they bashed the government about before they took office. But of course, saving 40 or 50 quid a night on a refugee Premier Inn and putting these individuals somewhere else, not only does it not really save any money, because they're still getting benefits, they're still entitled to NHS on the
They get 45 quid a week.
Well, they get that and an iPhone, and they get free dentistry, which of course we don't get, and certainly pensioners don't get.
They get an iPhone, yeah?
Yeah. Of course they do. And there are some councils, of course, now that are moving motions to give them free travel around their borough and their district, because of course, you know, they think that they will go off and try and find jobs. Well, I've got news from them. An asylum seeker isn't allowed to go and have a job, but what they are doing is using free travel to go and work in the black market, on the grey market, you know, on building sites for cash and so on. So that's basically what we're fueling. And of course, I mean, dare I venture that some of them get into criminality, Kev, would you believe?
Yeah, I mean, this is madness, folks. This is madness, folks. On the day one of his lousy administration, that half-wit Starmer ripped up the Rwanda scheme and said it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. Well, you know, and they were proudly. They then went on to proudly Calamity Cooper, Yvette Cooper, proudly revealed what we didn't actually know. We thought that something like 240 million, 300 million had been wasted on the Rwanda scheme. Well, in came Yvette said, no. It was 700 million. Well, if it was 700 million, you should have been all the more careful about not just chucking the entire scheme down the drain.
Yeah, they should have cancelled it.
You know, if you spent 700 million, it doesn't matter if it was a different administration. What about British taxpayers? What about the money that the Tories made us spend on this scheme? You people in Labour should have given it a go. To just dispense with, write off £700 million of British taxpayers' money that was spent on the Rwanda scheme was reckless, juvenile, infantile and frankly pathetic, and we are now reaping the rewards of your stupidity, Starmer, with this ongoing daily invasion, because they're not going to not come when we don't have any deterrence. You know, what we should be saying to them is, once you get here, you broke our laws, we'll detain you, we'll convict you and we'll deport you. Detain, deport. That should be our policy. Instead, our policy is, oh, once you're here, and what do you need? Oh, money? Food? Free doctors, free dentists? Oh, of course. Oh, you'd like free lawyers to fight your case to stay here? Well, consider it done. You know, and by the way, did you notice this? The Labour government now wants to raise the amount of money that each asylum seeker gets in terms of legal aid. They want more money to go to asylum seekers so they can successfully fight their cases to stay. This government, folks, loves migrants. Why aren't they solving the migrant crisis? Because they like the migrant crisis. They like these people coming here. They still believe in no borders, no border security. And what you've got here is a covert policy to continue the migrant crisis, to make it worse and worse and worse, because that fits right in with that fool, that sixth form student Keir Starmer's belief system. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. And next up, we'll talk about Keir's bizarre belief that somehow he's at the centre of the Ukraine war peace talks. Man, is he on drugs or something? I'm not suggesting he is, of course, but it might be some kind of explanation for his weird behaviour and his weird beliefs. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Keir Starmer and the main story of this morning. I put it down the schedule a little bit because I've been hearing it all day. I'm going to have a slightly different take on it. And that is, you know, the Prime Minister announcing that as these peace talks happen, they're going on now between Russia and America in Saudi Arabia. Zelensky isn't there from Ukraine yet, although he's expected to turn up on Wednesday. So it looks as if The Russians will be involved, obviously. The Americans will be involved, and Ukraine. Brilliantly, the Americans and the Russians say, we don't want those useless EU leaders here. They never achieve anything, so they can't come. So that lot are having an emergency summit in Paris saying, why didn't they invite us? Because you're useless and you never achieve anything. You're exactly what America hates. Woke, prevaricating, weak leaders, and that's why you're not there. Anyway, Starmer has, of course, joined the losers in Paris, but he seems to be saying, I can be the bridge between Donald Trump and Europe. As I said earlier, Russell...
But what's the point? Who cares?
When J.D. Vance addressed all the EU leaders on Friday in Munich and basically said, you better get with the programme, you better stop your disgraceful assaults on free speech, on freedom of expression, otherwise your American friendship will be over. When he addressed European leaders, Keir Starmer said he wasn't personally there. John Heaney, our Defence Secretary, and David Lammy, the useless Foreign Secretary, they were there. What Starmer doesn't seem to realise is J.D. Vance was talking specifically at Britain.
Britain and Germany, those two.
Britain, yeah. At Britain. Never mind bloody Germany. Nobody cares about Germany. At Britain. At Britain. Starmer, he was pointing the finger at you. And yet Starmer seems to think he's Trump's best mate. Where did he get that from?
Yeah, it's a bit like, you know, when you were at school and there was like the cool kids party that the nerds weren't invited to. The nerds went and had their own kind of, you know, night bowling. And that is the EU and Keir Starmer, isn't it? They're the nerds that are just bowling on their own while everybody else is having a good time in a nightclub. Yes, I mean, look, Keir Starmer, we know from his first 7 or 8 months as Prime Minister, he's neglected Britain, ruined Britain. We know that in very, very many ways. But what he has been absolutely desperate to do, and this demonstrates it, is to be seen as a world statesman. The man that is on the world stage and can fix things. But as you say, Kev, the likes of, you know, Trump, Putin and others are just laughing at him because he is inconsequential on the world stage. He has absolutely no influence whatsoever, and look, he is going to be absolutely humiliated. He has begged Donald Trump for an audience in Washington. Trump actually, in public, in the White House, looked down the camera and said, words to the effect of, yeah, this guy keeps badgering me for a meeting. He wants it. He keeps ringing me. I mean, he is humiliating Keir Starmer without Keir Starmer realising he's being humiliated.
Here's another reason why, you know, Keir's contention that he's like that with Trump, you know, really close to Trump, is absolute claptrap. Donald Trump is revisited an old campaign of his from his last presidency, which is the European nations must start stumping up their fair share on defence spending in order to be a member of NATO. They're supposed to spend 5% of their GDP. None of them do. None of them do. Britain spends 2.3%. We're one of the better performers. France and Germany way below us. Now, in fairness, America only spends 3.38% of their GDP on defence. So when Trump says, you know, everybody's got to spend 5%, he better get his own house in order as well. So what we're talking about here, you know, as in all things, particularly with Donald Trump, is transactional. There's a deal to be made here. But right now, Starmer's saying, oh, well, you know, I'm on the right side of him. No. What Trump is saying to Britain is, you've got to spend 5% of your GDP on defence. Otherwise, I don't want to know about you as a member of NATO. What are we saying effectively? What is Trump saying, or rather Starmer saying effectively? Oh, well, we spend 2.3%, and we are sort of trying to get it to 2.5%. So Starmer's not even trying to meet Trump in the middle. He's got a vague promise he's going to try and get it up to 2.5%, which is at least an entire percent, probably more, less than Trump wants it to be. So again, you can't go around saying, oh, me and America, we're very close, when he is trampling over what Donald Trump requires of him for our defence spending. It's another kind of, it's a weird situation.
And the game of chess on defence is being played here. We are already losing. So Pete Hegseth, who is the US Defence Secretary, went to Munich on stage, and as part of his humiliation of, where he and J.D. Vance humiliation of European leaders, Pete Hegseth said very, very clearly that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, and I expect this 5% of GDP contribution. Or, you know, of course, they've threatened to leave NATO on the basis that if that doesn't happen, they don't want to be the crutch that holds the rest of NATO up. But then David Lammy, of course, predictably did a very, very silly thing on stage, trying to punch above his weight intellectually. He said publicly, we, as a government in Britain, are committed to 2.5% of GDP spending. Now, in the election campaign and since, what the Labour government have said is that they expect to get to 2.5% of GDP eventually, but they won't commit to when. So in other words, it's a completely empty promise. It means nothing.
Who cares anyway?
No, but the fact is now Lammy, no, it's not. But in baby steps, Lammy has now effectively committed himself to having to now increase that, presumably without telling Rachel Reeves, without telling Keir Starmer, because he wanted to big it up on stage. It's an absolute disaster.
Yeah, but
we're being played.
But it's the equivalent of you owe me 50 quid. And you know, I haven't paid you back for 8 months or something.
This might actually be true.
This is a true story. I've been waiting to get this out. No, it's the equivalent of you owe me 50 quid. You haven't paid me back for 6 months, and you turn around to me and say, "Hey, Kev, I've got great news. We could be best friends again because you know that 50 quid I owe you." Me go, "Yeah, Russell, I'm going to give you 2 quid of it back." You know, that's effectively what Starmer is saying in terms of our expenditure on our defence. Let's have a little look at Mr. Keir talking about sending troops to Ukraine. Another very bizarre development, but here comes Corporal Keir. Take it away.
We must continue to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position, whatever happens next, and to make sure that if there is peace, and we all want peace, that it is lasting. This isn't just about the front line in Ukraine, it's the front line of Europe and of the United Kingdom. It's about our national security, and I think that we need to do more. We need to step up in terms of our collective response in Europe. And by that I mean capability, by that I mean playing our full part when it comes to the defence of the sovereignty of Ukraine if there's a peace agreement, and of course when it comes to funding and training.
So he's, in that statement, what he's doing is committing Britain to sending boots on the ground, military boots on the ground, to keep a peace in Ukraine. Half the time, that basically means to continue a war. So the chances are our boys will be in Ukraine fighting. But that notwithstanding, hasn't he noticed we haven't really got enough people or enough equipment to send our army to Ukraine, our armed forces, because he and previous governments have depleted our defence spending to such a ludicrously low level. Yeah. So we haven't got the numbers to do this. Again, he's living in fantasy land.
Our army wouldn't now fill a football stadium. I mean, that's how bad it is. I mean, we would not be able to fill a football stadium in the Championship, let alone the Premier League, with our army. But the other thing that I think is a bit silly of Keir Starmer in terms of his lack of judgment, trying to be kind here, is that as we enter a very, very delicate time where you're now going to have Ukraine, Russia and the United States trying to negotiate peace in Ukraine, you then get Keir Starmer lumbering in like a bull in a china shop saying, oh, and by the way, if this doesn't get resolved, blah, 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 I'm going to put boots on the ground in the Ukraine. What sort of response do we think we should elicit, we might elicit from Vladimir Putin? Because he is a bit like Trump. He's not a man that's kind of known for his humility, is he, Putin? I would imagine that has not helped one little bit in the negotiations that are about to take place.
Yeah, naive again, but I think it's Starmer desperately trying to
be relevant,
to portray himself as being a figure who is centre stage. Well, he's not, and ergo he hasn't been invited to Saudi Arabia. The only people in Saudi Arabia and negotiating about a Ukraine peace at the moment are Russia and America. On Wednesday, we understand Zelensky will turn up, and I think, you know, Trump and Vance and indeed Hegseth, the defence secretary, they're not stupid. They know that they've got to have Zelensky around the table to agree this deal, but they want nothing to do with European leaders, because well, what's it got to do with them? Really, what has it got to do with them? And we know as soon as they get involved, it'll be woke, weak and pathetic, and Trump knows that, Putin knows that, we all know that, so Zelensky knows that as well. So cutting out the EU leaders is a marvellous thing, and seeing them stage this emergency summit in Paris, why weren't we invited? Because you're useless and pointless. Do you agree, folks? 03444991000. When we come back, we'll talk about Rachel from Accounts. That noise about her lies about her career is not going away. Stay tuned.
What we need to do is get rid of the bureaucratic nightmare that's the NHS. It really is a bureaucracy. If you review a patient's notes now, and I've been in the business 50 years as a doctor, so I can remember the past. Someone was in charge. The doctors were in charge of the patients, and they'd make sure they got a good journey through the bureaucracy of the system. Okay, when I was first a consultant, the costs were much lower than they are now of treating people, and most people were a lot younger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back at 8 o'clock in about 5 minutes or so. 8 minutes I'll be joined by Ben Habib. We'll thrash out some of the big stories of the day. But first, let's quickly, I'm still with Russell Quirk, of course, let's quickly deal with Rachel from Accounts. The noise surrounding her CV lies, her career lies isn't going away, Russell. Now, the big one now is we know that she pretended she was an economist at HBOS when she was no such thing. She was a manager in charge of complaints or something. We know now that her claim to have been an economist for 10 years at the Bank of England was a crock of crap. She was actually an economist for 5 years and 9 months. She said, all right, it wasn't 10 years, it was 6 years. Well, it wasn't 6 years either. So she had to admit again that she was wrong, and then her people in her communications department said that this mistake was due to an administrative error. It wasn't. It was due to another lie. She's lying about her past. Now, most people, I don't think it matters much, but if you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer, if you got voted in your constituencies to be an MP on the back of your CV, if you then became the second most important person in this country, the Chancellor, on the back of your CV, this is an important issue. And never mind about her lives, this is even more serious. When she was at HBOS, 2006 to 2009, where, as I say, she says she was an economist, but she wasn't. She was a sort of complaints manager or something. Anyway, the allegation is she left under a cloud amid a big investigation into her and 2 other managers funding what was called a lifestyle, a luxury lifestyle, on the back of their company expense accounts, buying gifts for each other, wine, jewellery, dinners, taxis, you name it. And the word was that she had to quit over this investigation. But she says no, that she left on the best of terms. She never heard of such an investigation and was not questioned once about her expenses. Now, I think she's probably pushing it here.
Well, it doesn't seem that
because
that is entirely accurate.
This is colleagues of hers being on LinkedIn saying this is what happened. A lot of people who worked with her then said there was this investigation. A whistleblower went to the management and said these people are funding a luxury lifestyle on their expenses. And then not long afterwards, Rachel from accounts left and went to the Bank of England. She says, didn't know about an investigation, nobody ever questioned me about it. Now, if what the other employees, her colleagues, are saying is true, the whistleblower, then I'm finding it hard to believe no one ever spoke to her about this.
Well, there are several accounts. So reading about this in the media over the weekend, and this has popped back up, of course. So this was first reported some months ago, but now it seems that maybe some aggressive briefings from inside Downing Street or elsewhere has kind of made this kind of pop back up.
To be fair, the BBC, which previously acted like this story wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Finally, they caught journalism. They don't actually usually get it. They're usually absolutely allergic.
But it was glossed over. You know why it was glossed over previously?
They caught journalism and they investigated and they've got all this stuff.
Yeah, but they glossed over it previously because they thought that the CV lies, the CV embellishment, was the bigger story. But actually, I agree with you. I think actually when it comes to expenses and alleged impropriety, that is far, far more serious than just lying on your CV. When you listen to and watch and read the accounts from these particular people, some of whom were 2 or 3 levels above her at that particular bank, they say that there was an investigation, there were people, including her, interviewed, and that effectively it was held that there was a case to answer, that there was some improper stuff going on in terms of the things that were being bought, and importantly the fact that there was this daisy chain of sign-offs whereby the 3 people that we're talking about here, Rachel Rees and 2 others, were signing off each other's
their own expenses. That's the allegation.
Yes.
And buying each other drink
but
and jewellery.
The crucial thing is, and this is the get out of jail free card, or so Rachel Rees thinks.
No, she ain't getting out of this jail.
But so she thinks, is that, well, you know, if you know that you're banged to rights, I'm just, being hypothetical here, if you know you're banged to rights and there's an investigation against you and you leave before that investigation has concluded, then you think you're off the hook. That doesn't mean there wasn't an investigation, and it doesn't mean that she's potentially guilty of something.
And if we get a manager... Now, a manager came forward before, his name was Kev Gillett. He came forward on LinkedIn and said, no, she was never an economist. And he hashtag fact. Now, if another manager or if someone else comes forward and say, well, wait a second, this was an investigation and she was spoken to, then I think she's in trouble. I mean, she keeps trying to get out of lying by telling more lies. We don't know about this investigation, but if she's lying about this investigation when she said she knew nothing about it, and she did know about it, then she's in trouble. She really is. Big thanks to Russell Quirk, who'll be back next Monday. We'll be back in a minute with Ben Habib, so you better stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of tonight's Political Asylum, taking you all the way to the next news, which is at 9 o'clock, and then another hour until 10 o'clock. So lots still to come. But in this hour, in about 30 minutes or so, the floor is open to you. 0344 499 1000. Get on the phone and let me know what you think about our crazed expenditure on foreign aid. You know, I'm sure you're very pleased that all that money of yours went towards checking on the health of shrimps in Bangladesh, or poetry courses in Colombia, or the gender disinformation conference in Kenya. All of your money going to all of these very, very important woke causes. That's the point. They're not just spending it abroad. They're spending it on wokery, on left-wing claptrap. All, you know, like gender conferences and disinformation and inclusivity and all of that crap. Yeah, 0344 499 1000. Let me know what you think about this, and let me know what you think about Keir Starmer saying he put boots on the ground, military boots on the ground in Ukraine. Who the hell does he think he is? I'm not sure we've got any military boots to put on the ground, because he's reduced military spending so much. 0344 499 1000. But before we get to you, to your phone calls in about half an hour, let's spend the next 30 minutes in the excellent company of Ben Habib. He's the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, PAC for short. Welcome, Ben.
Good evening, Kevin. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I wanted to sort of recap a little bit because on Friday, you know, whiling away an afternoon, looking forward to the weekend, just about the most magnificent thing happened late on Friday afternoon when J.D. Vance addressed that hall full of complacent, useless, weak, woke EU leaders and tore them off a strip. Basically said, you get with the programme, you stop your disgraceful assaults on freedom of speech, usually in the name of wokery and left-wing politics, and you start behaving like America. Otherwise, our friendship will be cancelled. They were stunned. And since then, have you noticed the way left-wingers, the BBC, for example, have been trying to frame that speech as, it was bizarre, weird, bizarre. No, it wasn't. He was reading Europe, the Riot Act. Now, what I find strange about this is that Keir Starmer, now going around saying, I'll be the bridge between Europe and America for the peace talks with the Ukraine. He doesn't seem to have appreciated, to have understood that that speech was directed directly at him. Directly at him,
Absolutely.
His Labour government and their attacks on freedom of speech and freedom of expression in this country. And as such, he is never going to be Donald Trump's special friend in Europe, is he?
No, there's no hope of that. And it was... I don't think we can underestimate the significance of the speech that J.D. Vance made. This was not just a member of the administration. This was the Vice President of the United States of America coming over to Munich, speaking to the heads of the EU and saying, we see you, including Keir Starmer, as a greater threat to our security than we do Russia or China. And do you remember the complete stony silence with which that was received? But it was absolutely spot on, because what we've done to Western Europe, and indeed to the United States until Trump took over, what's been taking place, is the hollowing out of the entire Western civilized world on the altar of mass migration, which he also referenced in his speech, the protected status that immigrants are given when they come to Western civilized countries, and the way that you have to shut down effectively free speech in order to promote minority interests over and above and to the detriment of the majority. What we've seen take place in Western civilization over the last 25, 27, 30 years is the setting aside of democracy in the pursuit of what you rightly call woke ideology, which I define as the promotion of the individual's rights over and above, and if necessary and more often than not, to the detriment of the majority. Wokery is effectively is anti-democracy, and he was calling them out for their anti-democratic stance. And when you call out Western Europe and the United Kingdom, the mother of democracies in our country, you know, as we used to be regarded as being anti-democratic, you're effectively declaring a constitutional and political war on Europe and the United Kingdom. You're saying, we are not aligned. You are on a constitutional and political path with which the United States at the moment under this administration completely disagrees. And we see you as a greater threat, just to reiterate, greater threat than China or Russia.
And he's absolutely right.
He's absolutely right.
The greatest threat is from within. It is these leaders that we saw in Munich who just evoke and enforce laws, enforce a kind of cultural shift that is all in favour of migrants, foreign cultures, and not in favour.
And, you know, Kevin, just at the risk of repeating myself, the only way you can promote those minority interests in the way that we've been promoting them in this country is by shutting down free speech, because otherwise the majority would get the opportunity to speak against it. And you can't have the majority speaking against it because it would undermine the ideology.
Let me give you, Ben, let me give you an example of the shutting down of free speech, the kind of thing that J.D. Vance was talking about. It is, for example, a prime minister of a country, let's see now, let's call it Great Britain. It has a prime minister who sees widespread unrest over his appalling migration policies, and in order to shut it down, starts arresting people left, right and centre, and accusing those who worry about our escalating migrant crisis of being far-right thugs.
Absolutely.
That is an assault on freedom of speech, and that is exactly what J.D. Vance was talking about, and Keir Starmer is exactly who he was talking about. Let's remind ourselves, this is J.D., we've got a couple of clips from him, but this is him talking about Europe and free speech.
I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
And of course, there then was the long attack on Britain, in which he talked about, for example, a man praying within 300 yards of an abortion clinic for the child he lost, being just ruthlessly arrested by the cops, not listened to at all, and various other examples of tyranny in this country. So that speech was directed directly at, obviously, the other European leaders, but also Keir Starmer and his representatives there, David Lammy and John Heaney, the Defence Secretary. Keir Starmer is acting like it wasn't directed at him, that he's the bridge between the European wokies and America. He's not. He's right in the firing line.
Well, I was very pleased that J.D. Vance also mentioned Brexit and how the establishment stood against the vote to leave the EU. Of course, the EU is a malign institution, and the fact that Keir Starmer wishes to be part of the EU, and no matter what he says, we know he wants to be part of the EU. He was fanatical about the second referendum. He was a rejoiner, and he was caught, as you might recall, in Montreal when he thought he was off camera in 2023, saying that if I were ever to be Prime Minister, I would align us so closely with the EU that we would be effectively members of the EU. And any head of state that wishes to give up governance to a foreign power is basically anti their state. And as you and I have discussed in the past, Keir Starmer is anti-British. Now, let's just break that down for a second. Being anti-British, of course, is a very emotive way to describe it. But the other way to describe it is to say that he is anti the democratic unit that is the United Kingdom. And that's the way J.D. Vance was setting it out. He was saying that people voted for Brexit. The democratic direction that the British people wanted the government to take was in favour of leaving the EU, and the administration, the establishment, our parliamentarians stood against it, including the EU, by the way, who did everything in their power to undermine it. So these institutions are anti-democratic, and because they're anti-democratic, they are anti the units of democracy, which in our case is the United Kingdom. Yeah. If you're anti-democratic, you're anti-nation state. They both go hand in hand. And that is precisely what Starmer is. He's anti-British, he's anti-democratic, and he shares that with a whole host of European leaders, including every single commissar. I love the way he described them, not as commissioners, but commissars sitting in Brussels. Obviously an evocation of, Russian USSR history, which is precisely how this is all going. Yep. And I thought it was a most brilliant speech. And I was at the ARC conference today, the sort of centre-right conference. And everyone had a spring in their step, because for the first time actually the greatest power on the planet was in tune with right wing, for which, I mean, right wing is a colloquial term for basically people who believe in their countries, believe in democracy, believe in small c
Believe in
conservatism.
common sense, Ben, as well.
Common sense, yeah.
Let's remind ourselves of J.D. Vance's direct attack on Britain at Munich in that brilliant speech on Friday.
I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Well, there you have it. Now, as I said earlier, Ben, the BBC has been leading the charge with this in characterising what I thought was a seminal moment, an extraordinary speech, one of the great all-time speeches, zoning in.
He's changed global politics.
Yeah, zoning in on the key problem of Europe, these weak, woke, useless leaders who work against their own national interests to signal their virtue. He zoned right in on that, and the way the BBC and the left-wingers are saying, oh, it was weird, it was bizarre. No, it wasn't. It was not.
No.
J.D. Vance knew exactly what he was doing, and if it does not signal a kind of sea change, a change in direction on the part of Europe, then our complacent reliance on American friendship will be exposed.
Absolutely right. And of course, the British people woke up to this. I'm sorry to go back to it, but I think we can afford to pat ourselves on the back. We woke up to this illiberal global order in 2016 when we voted to leave the EU. We wish to bring back power, and we wish to bring back policy making for the betterment of the United Kingdom. And we saw this. You and I have seen it. Lots of people on our side of the debate have seen this for many, many years. But it's the first time we've had such a senior politician, perhaps, well, the second most senior, most powerful politician, arguably in the world, coming to Europe and saying it as it is. So far, it's been smaller voices. But I think this is a seismic moment. It's a moment for Europe to decide which side they're going to go with. Are they going to go for the totalitarian shutdown of free speech, the end of nation states, the end of their cultures, the end of their communities, the end of their family values and all the rest of it? Are they going to continue down that path? Or are they going to wake up and do what the United States is leading the charge on, which is to champion their own countries, promote their own people, and do what's right for their people? And by the way, a lot of this woke crowd will say, Ben, what you're doing is inciting the end of global peace, because the natural end of what you're advocating is nations combating each other. And that's completely wrong. Just because we want to promote our own people's interest and protect our countries and promote them and celebrate our cultures and so on, doesn't mean that we're going to automatically go to war with other people. I believe fully in cooperation on the national stage. I just think when you cooperate on the national stage, it should be as proud, independent, prosperous nations, not as some amalgam of nothing where none of us really know who's governing what, and power seeps into the hands of those who should never have it, those who are unelected and unaccountable to the people, which is where we've got to.
Absolutely, and I think the most hilarious spectacle of today, in fact, the funniest thing I've seen for a long time, is the emergency summit of fed-up EU leaders in Paris who want to know, and of course Keir Starmer's gone there, who want to know why they haven't been invited to the Ukraine peace talks. It is because America and Russia view you lot as being incapable of deciding anything, that your indecision is final, you'll just make a mess of it, they don't want to know. And we have to go to break now, Ben, but let's finish this section on a little piece of comedy. This is Christoph Husgen. He arranged the security conference in Munich. He is a former German ambassador to the United Nations in New York, and he was very upset by J.D. Vance essentially announcing that all this woke crap that you've been ruining Europe with has to end. Here is Christoph's reaction.
After the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelensky. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
It's beyond pathetic. They're still applauding. They're applauding this ludicrous wokery. Our common values. Yeah, your common values in your little EU Brussels gang club. Not my values, not your values, Ben, not the values of millions and millions and millions of EU citizens, their values. And J.D. Vance just drove a truck through their values, and I think it was a brilliant seminal moment.
And I think it's great that President Trump, Rubio, Vance and others are trying to bring peace to Ukraine. What's this obsession with prolonging a war, which we all know is unwinnable? How are you going to beat nuclear-armed, absolutely resolutely committed to the battle, Russia? I'm not advocating in any sense for Russia. I'm not justifying their invasion of Ukraine. But you're not going to defeat Russia. This notion that we can write a blank check for Zelensky until he has cleared all Russian troops from his territory is an absolutely absurd one. And particularly when it comes from the Europeans. The Europeans baited Russia, then they rewarded Russia for their bad behavior in 2014. It was France and Germany that sat on the Ukraine and required them to accept that Crimea was taken by Russia.
Yes,
people forget that. And then it was the Germans that enriched Russia by buying their gas and oil, setting up Nord Stream, cutting out Ukraine by setting up Nord Stream. Ukraine used to get a tariff for gas and oil that went through its country, cutting out Ukraine, making themselves vulnerable as a result of becoming reliant on Russian oil and gas, against the advice of the President Trump back in 2016. Europe is squarely part of the problem here. Like in so many things, Europe has got this completely wrong.
Ben, we've got to go to break now, but I will say that these peace talks, now that the Russians and the Americans, and indeed Zelensky, have wisely cut the useless EU leaders out of the action, these peace talks have got a genuine chance of succeeding. If the EU lot are there, it wouldn't succeed. So that's why they're not there, and they're having their little fed-up conference. So why aren't we there? Because they've got your number. You're useless. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about these tribunal tribunal judges whose decisions about keeping migrants here get more and more bizarre by the day. That next, stay tuned.
Britain spends $15 billion a year on overseas aid. Well, that $22 billion black hole, well, didn't need to exist, did it? British taxes are being squandered on, here's some examples. Shrimp farms in Bangladesh. What's that supposed to be doing? Poetry workshops in Colombian jails. Oh, that's a real Marshall Programme. That's going to keep Europe safe, isn't it? Let's make some shrimp farms in Bangladesh and teach skinheads in Colombia to, I don't know, quote Shakespeare. And gender lectures in Kenya.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still talking to Ben Habib, the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee. Ben, let's just quickly talk about these tribunal judges. These are the people who decide whether or not people are deported, whether or not asylum seekers can stay, particularly when they start appealing against decisions to get rid of them, to send them back to their home country, you know, usually because they're things like, I don't know, jailed paedophiles, people who've done 6 years for rape, that kind of thing. They come out, they should be immediately deported. They tend to appeal to these tribunals and these tribunal judges, who all seem to be Guardian readers, always let them stay. So last week we heard about the absurd case of the jailed guy who wouldn't be sent back to Albania, was going to be, but was able to say, well, my son, my 10-year-old son, he's vulnerable and he doesn't like the taste of foreign chicken nuggets, so that would be unfair. So he got to stay. Another woman from Grenada in the Caribbean, her husband is Latvian. She was being deported. She was allowed to stay because she said, well, look, you know, my husband, A, he doesn't like Caribbean food, and B, those temperatures in Grenada, they're too hot for him. She's allowed to stay on the back of him, and so on and so forth. Paedophiles, sex criminals, rapists are routinely allowed to stay because if they were sent home, they would be persecuted, quite rightly too, in my view. It's always the European Convention on Human Rights. That's what gets these people to stay. So the new egregious cases that have cropped up in the last couple of days. One is a rapist, a paedophile rapist who raped children. Known only as RC, we have afforded him the special privilege of not naming him. You know, we look after him in that respect. You know, he raped our children, but we're going to respect him by not revealing who he is. Well, because of Article 3 of the ECHR, which prohibits, and I quote, torture, inhuman treatment and degrading punishment. He did 2 years in jail for paedophile rape, but he can stay in Britain because to send him back to his native Zimbabwe would mean he would be badly treated by his fellow compatriots. Well, A, I don't care. And B, he deserves to be badly treated. He's a paedophile. Also, Ben, the new one emerging today, a violent Polish crook called Konrad Makocki. We get to name him, so that's one improvement here. He's got 9 criminal convictions. He's done 10 months in jail. He has a history of inflicting domestic abuse on women. He can stay because the tribunal has decided, because he has a very close relationship with his nephew, that has to continue. That is his right to a family life, and he can stay. On and on this madness goes. Last week, of course, you saw that a judge called Hugo Norton-Taylor effectively raised the drawbridge for every single Palestinian to come here because, you know, they're suffering war and torture in Gaza. These tribunal judges, they've got to be stopped. And they go, oh, well, our hands are tied. It's the ECHR, it's the terms of the ECHR, Article 8, Article 3. No, their hands are not tied. This is a question of interpretation, and they always interpret the rules against Britain because they don't really like Britain. They think we're a racist, repressive regime. These tribunal judges are one of the big scourges of our country right now.
So the European Convention, as embodied in domestic British law through the Human Rights Act, and therefore affording the European Court of Human Rights the supreme position as a judicial authority in our country, a foreign court in our country, holding sway over these really key issues, has basically set human rights on the one side against the rights of the British people. This is exactly the same thing we were discussing in the first segment. This is the damage that's been done to democracy on the back of this woke ideology, where an individual's rights are so important that they trump what is in the interests of the majority. There is no benefit to the majority of the British people, no benefit to civil society in the United Kingdom by a paedophile, a Zimbabwean paedophile, being kept in this country when he should rightly go back to Zimbabwe. There's no benefit for the British people in an Albanian staying in this country because his son doesn't like Albanian chicken nuggets. But on the altar of human rights, where everyone's rights are more important, including those of the victims that have been suffered at the hands of these people, on that altar, we will have these ridiculous decisions being made. And what we've got to recognize is that it is the majority interests that have got to start ruling again. And there has to be a carve-out for the protection and promotion of British civil society's interests over and above and to the detriment of the individual's right, where that individual has proven themselves to be incompatible with British civil society. It's kind of basic. Yeah. And they should all be sent back. And if they're not sent back, they should be incarcerated in perpetuity in our jails. The most heinous crime, in my view, Kevin, and I'm sure you agree with me, the most heinous crime is a crime against children.
Absolutely.
Absolutely disgusting. And yet our woke judges actually take quite a lenient line on it.
Well, what they do, Ben, is they prioritise the welfare of these scumbag child paedophiles, people who sexually abuse children, who rape children. They prioritise their welfare over the safety of British children. So
Absolutely.
They let these people out and they let them stay. Now, these paedophiles are a danger, a clear and present danger to children. And
Absolutely.
and therefore should be kicked straight out of the country. They came here, they abused our hospitality by breaking our laws, not only just breaking our laws, breaking, as you said, the worst laws, those that protect children from adults who want to prey on them sexually. These people break those laws. They rape children, they come out, and some idiot judge, some Guardian-reading idiot will say this guy has to stay because if he goes back to Zimbabwe, he will be persecuted by his fellow Zimbabweans. You know, A, I don't care. In fact, B, I quite like that idea. And C, what about our children? What about the threat,
Absolutely.
the danger he poses to our children? The fact that judges are prioritising horrible people like this, their welfare over the welfare of British children, is an absolute scandal.
It is. And let's just remind ourselves what the other side of this coin is. You mentioned it in the first segment. The other side of this coin is the criminal justice system in this country being politicised and used against British people who express any kind of concern about what's going on, what you and I have just discussed. And that manifests itself, for example, in the arrest of 70-odd people after the Southport killings who tweeted stuff and said stuff and had placards that, you know, with which the establishment disagreed. They were arrested and incarcerated. It also manifests itself in non-crime hate incidents where you get perfectly legitimate, upstanding members of society, of the journalist community like Alison Pearson, who have the police knocking on their door because of what they tweeted a year beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole system needs a reset, which is why, again, going back to the first segment of this program, which is why J.D. Vance was so right. You know, Europe needs to wake up. We need a reality check. It's not about the individual's right at all costs. There has to be a healthy balance between liberalism, which is the promotion of the individual rights, and the democratic interests of the majority of the people. And ultimately, actually, Kevin, when it comes to a showdown between the interests of the majority versus the interests of the individual, it has to be the interests of the majority that prevail. That is at the heart of democracy, and we have set that aside.
We have got half-wits, Guardian-reading half-wits presiding over these tribunals. They call themselves judges. They have no judgment. They're idiots. They're absolute idiots. But they are pursuing a kind of agenda. I think they see themselves as warriors fighting a repressive, racist British regime. I think they really do. And I think it's a massive problem. I'll tell you what, Ben, I'm going to go to break now, but can you stick around? There's a particular story I want to put to you and get your reaction. So we'll go to break now, and when we come back, more with Ben Habib, so stay exactly where you are.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Ben Habib. I know I said I was going to go to the phones, but I think this is a more important story, and there'll be plenty of time for you around about 9:20 for the rest of the show. So 40 minutes we'll be taking your calls, but I wanted to get Ben's take on this. First of all, Ben, this is a guy called Mohammed Hoblos. He is what you might call an Islamic hate preacher, lives in Australia, born in Lebanon. As of now, appears to be coming for a 5-city tour of Britain for a kind of Ramadan show that he's calling Together as One. It's him and 5 other preachers. It starts on Wednesday in London and will go through 5 cities. Now, he's been banned from 29 countries in Europe, all the Schengen area countries. 29 EU countries have banned him because of his extremism. Here's for FYI, as they say, for your information. Here he is in action saying that Allah prefers paedophile rapists who rape babies every single day but pray to perfectly decent, blameless individuals who do nothing wrong but don't pray. Here he is. Have a look at him.
Adultery, zina. What about the one who rapes a child? What about the one who drinks alcohol? What about the one who does the biggest of the kabair, good or bad? This person, one person that commits all of these sins, he commits all of these sins on a daily basis, but he prays, is better in the eyes of Allah than the one that doesn't commit any of these sins but doesn't pray.
Yeah, well, he sort of loves Hamas, hates Israel, basically stirs up a lot of hate, and that's why he's been banned from 29 EU countries. Just to put you in the picture, I've been talking to the Home Office since last Wednesday afternoon. I said, is he coming then? Because he's been banned everywhere else. And they said, well, he's actually in the system. We're approaching a decision. I said, well, what are you going to... He said, well... So they said, we'll take your email address, Kev, and we'll let you know as soon as we made a decision. Still haven't heard anything. The Home Office has now changed its position to we never comment on individual cases. So this is Wednesday. This is Monday. His tour starts in London on Wednesday. As far as I can work out, he's still coming. And the Home Office say we're not going to talk about it. I think the Home Office, I'm all for free speech, but I suspect this guy crosses the line. If countries like Germany and France won't let him in, he crosses the line, trust me. He's still coming here by the looks of it. Ben, what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpick there. You know, the first obvious thing to say is that any Muslim who endorses this man is endorsing paedophilia. You know, you can greenwash it with saying your prayers, apparently, but anyone who supports this man is supporting paedophilia, supporting rape, supporting all the criminal activities that he said were perfectly fine. Yeah. So this man, I think, for any Muslim who wishes to be a law-abiding, respectable member of British society, presents a clear and present danger. Every Muslim in this country should denounce that man. That man is disgusting. He shouldn't be anywhere near, as we say, you know, as I was saying earlier, civil society. This man is not civil. This man doesn't understand what it means to be here right now on this planet. It doesn't matter what Allah thinks when it comes to paedophilia. It's unacceptable.
What do you think, though, Ben? What do you think, Ben, on the fact that every other 29 European countries, you know what they're like? I mean, they're not exactly known for their hardline border security policies. Every other country in the Schengen area, 29 countries, no, you can't come in. Absolutely banned. Our Home Office, I mean, who knows whether he's still going to come? I think he probably is. But why is it taking them so long? Why do they prevaricate so much? And why won't they tell us?
Well, I'm absolutely amazed by that clip. I'm amazed. You know, when you think that Alison Pearson of The Telegraph, we discussed this earlier, was arrested, or not arrested, she had police knock on her door and question her because she made a tweet a year earlier which was benign by comparison to what this guy said. This guy should be arrested immediately when he puts foot on British soil. He shouldn't be allowed onto British soil. He speaks English extremely well. Is he a British citizen?
He lives in Australia.
Yeah, Australia.
If you listen carefully, you can hear an Australian twang.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm amazed he's not incarcerated. A man like that who espouses such evil beliefs, evil system, should be imprisoned. There's no place for him in British civil society.
And this is the point, isn't it? This is sort of what J.D. Vance is saying, is why can't you, Keir Starmer and the other European leaders, why can't you get real about this sort of thing? Show a bit of backbone. In fairness, the Schengen countries have. We haven't. We still haven't. We haven't even got the guts to make an announcement that this man can't come in. We've got, as I say, less than 48 hours he'll be here. In fact, in less than 48 hours he'll be performing at his stage show, his money-spinning stage show. Why can't we make an announcement? What is wrong with us as a country? It
is the end of democracy in the pursuit of liberalism. That's where we've got to. This notion that the individual has the right to do whatever they wish to do. And it doesn't matter how it impacts the majority. It doesn't matter how it impacts our children. Doesn't matter how it impacts our economy. Doesn't matter how it impacts our cultural values, our history, our belief system, our modern contextual context. None of it matters as long as the individual is promoted. And that's how we've got to where we are. And at the heart of all of this, actually, what we've been discussing throughout this program, Kevin, is the European Convention of Human Rights, one way or another. That is the root of all this evil, because it sets aside individual capacity to think, analyze, and use common sense, as you said, to determine what the right solution is. And the right solution never can come out of the ECHR the way the ECHR is being implemented at the moment. Never.
Absolutely not. Ben, how fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Great stuff. Ben Habib there, chairman of the Great Political Action Committee. Mohammed Hoblos, should he be banned? Why won't they tell us? I mean, the guy said his tour starts in London, in East London, in 2 days, less than 2 days' time, Wednesday night. So why won't they tell us? Last week they said they were going to send me, the Home Office will send you a email as soon as we've come to our decision. And that seems to have gone by the wayside. And they're now saying we never talk about individual cases. Well, you should talk about this one. This guy seems like he could be dangerous, kind of divisive, whipping up hate, possibly whipping up violence. These are violent thoughts he's promoting there. That nonsense about paedophiles and Allah. These are violent thoughts. Shouldn't he be banned? 03444991000. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the wonderful world of art and nude modelling. It appears to have been banned at an art class in Hampstead, my part of the world, in North London. A class has been going for 30 years. Suddenly, they've been told no more nude modelling. Is this a return to some kind of Victorian prudishness? I damn well hope not. That next, stay tuned.
if reform overtakes Labour, that will be a very salutary lesson for Labour.
Under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour had an enormous membership, and they went on to get slammed by Boris in the 2019 election. But you're absolutely right. Having that many members just show that this is a growing movement. It's not a flash in the pan. It's serious, and it's a very serious threat to both the Tories and to Keir Starmer's Labour.
This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, up where I live, Hampstead, North London, fashionable, full of rich people, apart from me, of course. There's an art class. It's been going at the Hampstead Community Centre for 30 years, run by an artist called Tony Swan. Amateur thing, people go along, they have fun, they enjoy. Now, suddenly Tony and his students, and indeed models, because they do nude, it's drawing, so they do nude drawing, have been told that there are safeguarding concerns because kids use that community centre as well. Well, apparently there's no crossover. There's never been any complaints from parents or children in 30 years, but now they've been told that the only way they can carry on with their daytime nude drawing sessions is if the models put clothes on. So in other words, this smacks to me as a potential return to the kind of Victorian prudishness we'd hoped we'd got rid of, kind of retrograde step. Let's talk to the art critic at The Telegraph, Mark Hudson. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Kevin.
The Tony Swan, the guy who gives these art classes, and indeed one of his nude models, has said that, as far as they can work out, Hilary Curtis, 63, she's one of their life models. She said the fact that they said we could stay if we switched to using clothed models makes it seem very clear to me that this is prudishness. Well, we shouldn't be prudish about art classes as long as kids aren't looking in, which they're not. We shouldn't be prudish about nude models and art sessions, should we?
Not at all. Funnily enough, you mentioned the prudishness of the Victorian era. Life drawing classes, as they're known, went on thriving throughout the Victorian era and have done for about 600 years. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Van Gogh, every artist worth their salt has undertaken these classes, which, the human body is such an incredible organism. It's the things that gets us all from A to B, allows us to stand up and do everything else we need to do. And when you're drawing it, and I've done this myself extensively, you can see how the musculature, the bone structure all fits together, and trying to capture that in 2 dimensions on your drawing board, your bit of paper, as every artist has done for 600 years, is one of the best disciplines any artist can have. And any ordinary person who undertakes it will get a great deal out of learning to look. Yeah. So, I think if that's endangered, that's an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, and this class has been going for 30 years. It's a sort of fun class. I suspect senior citizens go, and people, who just want to while away a few hours and enjoy the art. Tony Swan, who runs this class and has done for years, he said, it strikes me, as almost like the Taliban coming in saying you can't run a class. I wasn't aware that it was a dangerous thing to be doing. I mean, your paper, The Telegraph, has run it, Mark, and so has The Times. It's not a dangerous thing. It's a perfectly harmless pursuit. And what worries me is that people are sort of seeing something sinister in what is a completely innocent, age-old activity, drawing nudes.
Absolutely. It's absolutely bizarre. I mean, the whole thing just takes me back, funnily enough, not to the Victorian era, but to lockdown, when you suddenly had people, you know, like the Tate Gallery, postponed an exhibition because a couple of paintings were thought they might be, you know, a bit too sensitive for some people. A sort of mad panic response. I mean, one person now can sort of, you know, capsize an entire activity. I wonder how many people really have complained about this, if any. It's a sort of weird terror of being cancelled or being seen to do the wrong thing. It's kind of overtaking too many aspects of society.
I think you might be right, Mark. The guy who runs the community centre said that he confirmed there have been, and I quote, safeguarding concerns. And then it goes on to say, which for confidentiality and data protection reasons he cannot share. I mean, it gets a bit more sinister by the moment. My main point is it's 30 years. Clearly, no one has ever complained. No parent has ever complained because there's no crossover with kids using. Kids don't come in at the end of the class still spotting.
Exactly.
You know, so this is reading into a perfectly innocent activity, something rather sinister. And it's a bit like, well, this says more about the people imposing this potential ban than the people actually engaged in the alleged nefarious activity, because it's not nefarious, is it?
Not remotely. Not remotely. No, I think you're absolutely right on that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, do you note at all a certain prudishness coming back into the art world? Because, of course, the art world traditionally has often, as you said earlier, depicted the nude form, sometimes quite graphically. I mean, are people getting a bit more prudish about that sort of thing?
No, I don't think they are. But anything that they perceive as being crossing any kind of line in terms of current standards of what's considered acceptable, the sort of powers that be get very, very twitchy. So as soon as the word safeguarding appears, you know, there are the potential problems, even if there are not going to be any children near the space for several hours afterwards. I cannot see how safeguarding is even an issue in this instance.
Yeah, it really is a bit of a OTT bureaucracy, if you ask me, but we'll follow that story and find out if there's a happy ending. Just before you go, you're a good artist, are you, Mark? Can you draw your as well as being a critic?
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a very quick question. How come you can draw men and I can't?
You've never tried, have you?
Yeah, I have. Trust me, it doesn't come out very well. It's that talent that some people have. Well, like yourself, artists. Why are there some people who can draw men and the rest of us can't?
Well, there is a natural skill that some people have, a kind of fluency. But I think one of the problems people have with drawing is they think, I must try and make something that looks like a good drawing in vertical.
Yeah.
They immediately want to go to Michelangelo stage. If they can't do that, what you got to do is just look with careful scrutiny and record that with patience.
Yeah.
I mean, it is work. There's no doubt about it. It's work.
Yeah, this haunts me. Why am I not as talented as Michelangelo? It's one of those imponderables. You can't ever get an answer. Mark, great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Mark Hudson there, art critic at The Telegraph. When we come back, Kinsey Schofield on the Royals. Stay tuned for that.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Right, in about 20-25 minutes, we will get to you. We'll get to your phone calls. I said it before and we didn't quite do it. That's because I thought there was an important question I needed to ask Ben Habib about that hate preacher, Mohammed Hoblos, who as of now is still coming to Britain, banned from 29 countries in Europe, but not banned from Britain as things stand. The Home Office playing their cards close to their chest. They're not going to tell you whether or not they are banning this man, whose preachings leave a lot to be desired. You know, I do think there's a fair case that this extremist, this Islamic extremist, whips up hatred, whips up potential violence. That's why he's been banned from Europe, but we're not banning him here so far. And now the Home Office, having told me last week they'd let me know, is now saying, well, we never comment on individual cases. Well, you did last week, so you've changed your policy, have you? Is he coming or not? 03444991000. So anyway, you might want to get involved in talking about that. In about 20-25 minutes, we're taking your calls. Keir Starmer thinks he's Donald Trump's best mate, but he's not really, is he? How is he going to be friends with Donald Trump when he has no intention of increasing our expenditure on defence? Starmer is demanding it. Or rather, Trump is demanding it, 5%, he's saying. We've got 2.3%, and we won't even raise it to 2.5%. How are we going to be friends with Trump on that basis? 03444991000. And what do you think about Trump saying he'll put British military boots on the ground in Ukraine to enforce a peace deal, a potential peace deal between Russia, America and Ukraine? And what do you think about the fact, hilariously and cleverly, in my view, all those EU losers, those leaders of those clapped out Brussels club countries are being excluded. They're not allowed there. They're having a summit, a little summit to tell each other how peeved they are about this. Why aren't we there? Why? Because you're useless. That's why. All of those and anything else you want to talk about, the ludicrous tribunal judges letting people stay, another paedophile allowed to stay, right to human life, and so on and so forth. Don't forget the crook, the jailed crook who won't be deported because his son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets, and so on and so forth. 03444991000. Let me know what you think. Before we get to you, though, it's time to discuss matters royal with our royal guru correspondent over there, back on the West Coast now. She was here last week, but good to talk to her all those miles away over there in LA. Hi to Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kins.
Hi, Kevin. I did not think that things could get any busier than they were last week, and I wake up today and see that American Riviera Orchard might be dead. She might be now calling it As Ever. She has a new logo that looks suspiciously like another existing logo. Meghan keeps us very busy, Kevin.
She certainly does. So what is the latest on American Riviera Orchard? Because last week, the big story was that Netflix were going to reinvigorate that whole project, start selling her jam and her honey and her wallpaper and her pet food and pet shampoo at various shopping malls in America, where Netflix have got physical stores, and that was the idea, would be to reinvigorate American Riviera Orchard to coincide with the release of her program With Love Meghan, which starts on March the 4th on Netflix. So what we knew prior to that, you and I discussed it at great length, is that American Riviera Orchard was mired in all sorts of legal wrangles, trademarks, what to call it, and even the name of the company itself was being challenged in the courts. Are you saying now she is going to have to change the name, Kinsey?
Yeah, we believe so. There is a new trademark under the name As Ever. Not enough to verify that this as ever. Boring as ever is what I would say.
Yeah.
Boring as ever. It's not necessarily that we don't have proof that this is necessarily what they're going to go with, because as you and I both know, Harry and Meghan enjoy sending us in 30 different directions. I don't know if it's a control thing or just avoiding the inevitable, where ultimately we dissect their projects and determine that some of them are absolutely terrible ideas. But it's the same design theme as American Riviera Orchard. The penmanship on the logo is similar to Meghan Markle's. It's the same law firm handling the legal trademark work, in a long list of products that she's trying to include, whether it be the yoga mats or the dog bowls or whatever. It's similar when listing off the products in the paperwork. Now, she filed that paperwork for As Ever in September of last year, just weeks after, we saw the cracks starting to appear when it came to the American Riviera Orchard trademark and name. And the logo that has been submitted looks like a coat of arms that already exists, which is very Meghan Markle, that the lack of creativity there does not surprise us, but something to keep our eye out for. I can very much see her deciding to surprise everyone with a different name. Yeah. Now that American Riviera Orchard has proven to be so difficult to get past the trademark office. And remember, this is also one of the things that her neighbors have complained about. You've hijacked our this
because the area where they live, Montecito, is called the American Riviera, and that's one of the reasons that she's encountered legal trouble with that name, because in the States you can't just utilize a geographical name because you could be seen to be cashing in on that. So that's where she's hit problems. So you now say it's going to be called As Ever. I think considering she launched it last March, pretty much an entire year ago, and it's still...
We could call it As Never.
Yeah,
As
it's
never.
exactly what I was... You see, you ruined my joke then. That's what I was going to say.
Or did I make it better because we're
You
on
did
the
make
same
it better.
page?
As always, Kinsey, you made it better. Yeah, but a better name for it would be As Never, because nothing seems to happen, but it may still launch now. Let's talk about last week when she went to Whistler in Canada to help launch the Invictus Games. Well, we know now that there's a lot of disquiet about her behaviour, the way she made that event all about her, constantly kissing Harry. And by the way, did you see on Valentine's Day she released yet another picture of her kissing Harry, this time in black and white. That would be on the Valentine's Day that she left him in Canada to fly back to America, to the West Coast, to Montecito. So who said the age of romance is dead? Well, it is with Meghan.
Just give it another 12 months, Kev. Once she has her Instagram really up and running, maybe next year it can be sponsored by some sort of herpes medication or something. Who knows? You got to get those. You got to get your posts sponsored.
But papers at the weekend here, Kinsey, all full of double-page spread, for example, in the Mail on Sunday, full of the fury emanating from the organisers of the Invictus Games, that woman came here and basically stole the limelight, stole all of our limelight, made it all about her. And they're still furious about this. And Harry allowed it. And one of the things that was going on that has really upset the media, really upset the organisers, is there were all these events, special events happening that the media were not allowed into. She went in, took pictures of it and filmed herself there and then put it onto her Instagram account. So it looked as if the entire occasion was organised to allow Meghan to get exclusive footage for her social media account. People noticed that and they're not happy.
Well, have you seen that Katie Price now actually charges media outlets to share the photos that she posts on social media? it's not fair game anymore. You know, if you want to share something that Katie Price posts on her social media, she charges you a fee. The countdown is on to when Meghan Markle does something similar. You know, you heard it here first. Yes, of course she wants the exclusive access. She's trying to grow her social media platform because her ultimate objective today is to be an influencer. And I think it's wildly suspicious that at the time that she shut down the TIG Instagram account and her Instagram account, because she was marrying Prince Harry, she had over 3 million followers. And today she struggles to reach a similar number. Why is that? Is it because she's alienated so many people? Is it because those numbers back in the day weren't authentic to begin with? Did she, I don't know, fluff the numbers up so using a digital agency or something so that she would look much more significant than she was when she was engaging with some of the brands she was trying to engage with at that time, like Bobbi Brown Cosmetics, and when she was big introduced to people like Prince Harry? I think it's all very odd, but yeah, clearly that was a strategy, so that if you wanted to see what was going on in the Invictus Games, there was only one place for you to go, and that was Meghan Markle's Instagram account.
Which the media are very upset about, and a lot of the organisers were too, we're led to believe. So she didn't exactly go down a storm up in Canada. So she came back last Friday, which was Valentine's Day, leaving Harry there. Not very romantic, to say the least. Came back, by the way, of course, you know, are we surprised, in a private jet. Killing the planet. So more hypocrisy. This from Harry and Meghan, who both lecture us about how we must leave a lower carbon footprint, we must save the planet, but they fly everywhere in private jets. One rule for them and a different rule for the rest of us. Them effectively saying, do as we say, not as we do. Harry, I wouldn't do what you told me if it was the last thing on earth, because I don't take instructions from idiots. But seriously, she came back in a private jet. Hypocrisy, yet more hypocrisy. And then we learn, though, this is the big development, again, a story we discussed last week, Kinsey, that the President Trump, who had at one point sort of threatened to kick Prince Harry out of America if it turned out he'd lied on his visa application. And he said last week, I'm not going to kick him out. You know, he's got enough trouble. He's got enough problems with that wife of his. She's terrible. That's what he said. The jury's out on that one, Meghan. You've got to prove that you're not doing too well so far. But
did you see the update over the weekend, Kevin? Yeah. That a new source told the Daily Mail that President Trump has made it very clear that if Harry is found to have not told the truth on his visa,
that's what I'm getting at. That he's not going to kick him out. But he will, if he's lied on his visa, he's going to sanction a full prosecution of Prince Harry. So the Heritage Foundation, the think tank in Washington, pursues this case. Show us your visa application. Because you wrote in your book, Spare, that you're a big drug taker. You love your cannabis and your cocaine and your magic mushroom chocolate and all that. All of these are illegal drugs, and certainly they are in Britain. And at the time I think he came over, they were illegal in California as well, so he came over to the States. Did he tell the truth on his visa application and say, I'm a drug taker? In which case, why was he allowed in? Because that's supposed to preclude you being allowed into the great country of America. Or if he didn't put it in there, that's a federal offence. That's a lie. So Trump now saying, OK, I might not deport you, but that doesn't mean to say you won't be prosecuted. If he gets prosecuted, that's going to be quite a case and quite a lot of embarrassment for Harry, isn't it?
I almost think being prosecuted is more humiliating and detrimental to Prince Harry's brand than just being kicked out of the country. Because the idea of a prosecution, they would comb through Harry's past drug use, and it would elevate it. You know, it would be so much more damaging because they would ask for things like dates. They would ask people like Courtney Cox to testify about, was she there the night he says in his book that he did mushrooms at her house? Remember, because she tried to distance herself from that story after it came out. But and then the Biden administration, when they were trying to protect these documents for Prince Harry, which obviously they're no longer in charge, one of the arguments to the judge was that Harry exaggerated in his book. These were just exaggerations. So if Prince Harry were to be prosecuted, that's absolutely something that would have been challenged. They would bring in witnesses. They would bring in people from Harry's youth that witnessed certain things. It would just be a deep dive, and the type of exposure that Prince Harry does not want, despite exposing other people and despite occasionally sharing too much information. He is a control freak when it comes to the type of information that he does share. And if it's not on his terms, you literally witness a hissy fit. So it's the last thing he wants. I think he'd much rather actually get deported than have to sit through some type of prosecution.
Well, there may be trouble ahead, as they say. And lastly, one of the things that won't behove him that well in the eyes of Donald Trump, the Archwell charity, the Archwell Foundation, has been recorded as donating $624,493 to causes that are linked to the Democrats. So, in other words, these $624,000 went to liberal Democrat causes. Donald Trump will make a note of that. That won't sit well with the president or the new administration, will it?
Yeah, so you and I had this discussion months ago, maybe, when we thought it was highly suspicious that Harry and Meghan's largest donation was to Ashley Biden for $250,000. Meanwhile, it was the Biden administration fighting so fiercely to protect Prince Harry throughout this visa case. And bringing this to our attention is actually Niall Gardner, who is a friend of both of ours, of the Heritage Foundation, who has called the Archwell donations to be scrutinized by Congress. He's called for them to, he wants Congress to take a look at them and determine whether or not this is acceptable. He said Harry and Meghan still retain royal titles and should not be engaged in any way.
Harry, I just called you Harry there. Also, Kinsey, you don't look like Harry, by the way. So Harry, basically, if he's lied on these forms, then obviously he's going to pay the price. But in terms of this $624,493, so if you donate to the Archwell charity, there's nothing on their literature saying we're going to give this to causes that the Democrats like. We're going to give this to the Democrat president's daughter. There's nothing about this. And yet, if you chart where this money's going, by the way, the Archwell Foundation doesn't get very much money. But the money that it does get, it seems to be channeling towards liberal left-wing Democrat causes. Again, that's pretty dodgy in terms of charity. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, it's dodgy, but it also makes you wonder what their ultimate objective is. Is it for favor? Now they have spoken out and they truly feel like the Heritage Foundation is just gunning for them, and they were very resentful of it. They say that the Heritage Foundation is, they've missed the mark here. But I think common sense tells us, are you looking for favors from the Democratic Party? Yeah. Why are you going out of your way to support these efforts? And if you know that this is going to be problematic, how quickly will you change direction and start contributing to some conservative outlets or some conservative campaigns? Because otherwise it just feels like you are pandering because you want power. and you are going to donate money to certain causes because you need favors in high places. That's what this feels like.
Yeah, and by putting all their money towards, or so much of this charity money towards the Democrats, they showed, they revealed their political astuteness, didn't they? You know, let's suck up to the Democrats because they'll definitely be the next administration. Couple of idiots didn't see which way the wind was blowing. They should have put their money towards Republican causes. Then Harry wouldn't be in any trouble with Donald Trump at all. But they stupidly went in the wrong direction. Big surprise. Kenzie, you and I will talk tomorrow for your excellent podcast. Recollections may vary. I'll look forward to that. And thank you once again for an excellent conversation tonight. Always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Kinsey Schofield there over in the West Coast, on the West Coast. Next up, your calls, your messages, your WhatsApp voice notes, all of that for the rest of the show, all the way until 10 o'clock when Petri Hoskin will take over and take you through to 1 a.m. So lots still to come. Stay tuned.
you are concerned about the illegal migration issue, you shouldn't be using delivery, you shouldn't be using car washes, you should order your vape shops from Tesco, your vapes from Tesco and not go to those vape shops. You shouldn't be going to those businesses that you think probably have improper employment practices. But we also need the state to be doing some more as well. We need them to be starting to levy really hefty fines because, frankly, we've got over 1 million people in this country here illegally, and if we want to start removing a large number of them, we're going to need the funds to do so.
This is Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's start taking your calls in just a minute. I'll read a couple of messages. This is from Carl in Derbyshire. Those empty suits in the EU are absolutely terrified that Donald Trump will be successful in getting peaceful solutions in Ukraine and Gaza, whilst their deliberations have achieved the square root of F all. Absolutely right, Carl. That's it. That's why Russia, neither Russia nor America, I suspect Zelensky too, want any of those losers, those EU losers who frankly couldn't organise a booze up in a brewery, let alone run their own countries. They don't want them anywhere near it because all that lot do is jaw, talk, and never achieve anything. And all you got to know about the EU is that idiot German guy crying because he thinks their shared values have taken a perler because J.D. Vance, the American vice president, went to Munich and read them the Riot Act and said, stop trampling on freedom of speech. He was absolutely right. And that idiot starts crying, oh, but we want to trample on freedom of speech. We don't like freedom of speech. We want to run the show. Not anymore, you're not. Simple as that. This is from Dorothy in East Kilbride talking about our friend, the Islamic hate preacher, Mohammed Hoblos. Hi, Kevin. I am beyond rage listening to the hate preacher. Why are their imams not calling out their speech? He needs to be arrested and sent to jail. Western countries must stand up for British citizens and our beliefs. Shame on this government. Well, every other, you say it, arrested, we don't even know if he's here yet. Every other European country in the Schengen area, 29, or the main, basically the continental European countries, have banned him. We haven't. Why is that, do you think? Why is that? Is it because the Prime Minister and the Labour Party rely on the Muslim vote and they don't want to upset the Islam community? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. This is from John in Halifax. Keir says he's going to put British boots on the ground. Is he going to be wearing a pair? Are you, Sir Keir? That's John in Halifax. Of course not. Of course not. Phil says, don't be taken in by Vance. You know he's anti-abortion. Well, he's got a right to be anti-abortion, hasn't he? And as far as I know, he's not against gay rights. That's not true. I kind of looked up to him over a 5-year period. Well, I think you should look up to him. I thought that was an incredibly impressive speech and a game changer in terms of Europe. Those EU Brussels Club leaders are on. They've been warned. They've been warned by America. Stop trampling on freedom of speech for your own woke credentials, so you can polish your own halos and signal your virtue. Oh, look, aren't we good? Aren't we woke? Have enough. We've had enough of it. We all have. And while you think that Vance's speech was weird and bizarre, people in this country, millions of people all over Europe, went, thank God, thank God. Let's quickly go to the phones before we have to go to break again, but let's talk to Georgina in London. Hello, Georgina. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Kevin. I'd just like to say that I've come to the conclusion that Keir Starmer is totally delusional. Donald Trump doesn't want that man within a farmer's mile downwind at the or him to be the middleman in this situation.
Correct, Georgina, correct.
Very delicate situation. Mr. Starmer's track record, let's face it, has not been a good one. It leaves a lot to be desired. This is not President Trump's first rodeo. He knows exactly what he's doing. There will be binding caveats within President Trump's peace treaty. He will make sure that both sides come to a conclusion that they are happy with to the best of human ability. And they can both, Putin and Zelensky can then go forward without a threat of future unrest.
Yeah.
You know, Keir Starmer would be better off concentrating on the UK and the problems here and how to rectify the problems the British public are facing right here.
Yeah, you know what he's doing now, Georgina, don't you? What he's been doing all this weekend. He's trying to place himself centre stage. He's trying to say, he's trying to say somehow or other that Britain as a special. We're different to those European leaders that J.D. Vance roasted on Friday. No, you're not, Starmer. Vance was effectively pointing directly at number 10 Downing Street, directly at Keir Starmer and his socialist crew, and telling them no more of this suppression of free speech. Starmer's postulating, saying, oh, I'm the man, I'm the bridge between America and Europe. No, he's not. He's just jealous that Nigel Farage is that man. This is absolute nonsense, fantastical nonsense. And you're right, Georgina, this guy, Starmer, utterly delusional, delusional.
He wants to be the middleman in these peace talks between...
How could he be? He's not in them.
No, he actually, in reality, is the wicker man. He's going to crash and burn like he does every time.
Well, he's not in them, though, Georgina, is he? Like every other European leader, he is being specifically excluded. They don't want him anywhere near there because they see him as being, quite rightly, being exactly like those woke, weak losers who run those failing European countries, those failing EU countries. They see him as exactly the same, and they are not going to be doing any deals with him. It's really weird that he's trying to pretend that he's somehow different to that lot, because he's not. He's right in the middle of it. Georgina, great call. I've got to move on, but please call me again. Very good points. Georgina in London there. Let's quickly go to, before we go to break, let's talk to Karen in Bournemouth. What do you think of Keir Starmer, Karen?
Parasitic, swamp swimming, blood-sucking, lying, cheating, treacherous, treasonous traitor. He should be removed from office before he kills us all and take his crony, cretinous cabinet cranks with him.
Don't sit on the fence, Karen. Say exactly what you think. No, seriously, really good, that. Absolutely. He is... he's the same as all those Brussels leaders. Where is he today? Where is he today? He's not like making overtures to Washington.
He's calling up Macron.
Yeah, exactly. He's gone to Paris to join this little emergency summit of useless EU leaders who can't believe that an American leader, a Russian leader, and indeed the Ukrainian leader have turned around and said, look, if we've got any chance of peace, we cannot have those EU leaders within a country mile of these talks. He is the same as the rest of them. He's not in them because Trump and Vance, and for that matter, Russia, Putin, and indeed Zelensky, they just think he's useless.
True.
Yeah, he is. Same as the rest of them. Karen, I couldn't agree with everything you said more. Really good call. Thank you for ringing. Karen in Bournemouth. She's right, isn't she? He's just a cretin. He's a cretin representing a cretinous government. And J.D. Vance told him and the rest of Europe what they think of them on Friday. OK, Starmer wasn't personally there, but Lammy was there. John Heaney, the Defence Secretary. They were all shocked and stunned. That was America's verdict on woke, weak Europe. And they've had enough. And they will not accept Britain, especially, but the other countries as well, stamping on freedom of speech and freedom of expression anymore. Keir Starmer, Bridget Phillipson, Rachel Reeves, all of that lot have been slowly killing freedom of speech in this country, and J.D. Vance put them on notice that America won't put up with it. You want America's friendship, you better adhere to their values. And their values are good, ours are not in this case. 03444991000. We'll go to break. More calls, more messages when we come back. Stay exactly where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're going to go back to the phones in just a second, but I better play some WhatsApp voice notes. Here is Susan, who wants to talk about Keir Starmer. Take it away, Susan.
Hiya, Kev. Please tell me I'm wrong with this opinion. Starmer is setting us up, Great Britain, England, whatever you'd like to call it, is setting us up for a Muslim takeover of our country. That's what he's doing. Please tell me I'm wrong. Without the Americans, we wouldn't stand an absolute chance.
Susan, I don't think you are wrong. I don't think he's actually kind of going totally for a Muslim takeover of this country, but he's certainly allowing the Muslim community to get more and more influence. He certainly gives succor to those extremists who call for Sharia law. He recently said in Parliament that, the desecration of religious tracts must be condemned. Well, all right, you can condemn it if you like, but it must not be against the law. This Prime Minister seems to be, in order to appease Muslims, edging towards bringing back the blasphemy laws or something ridiculous like that. So you got a good point there, Susan. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Jay in Essex. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Kevin. It's regarding
the hate preacher, Mohammed Hoblos, yes.
Oh, God. Anyone with a brain knows what they should do. The void and the lack of transparency after the Southport killings started the riots and made them so much worse.
That's a really good point.
I thought they'd learnt their lesson.
Yeah.
There are thousands and thousands of people watch your channel and GB News who also have been talking about this.
Yeah.
Now, there's no reason not to say they've been banned from the country.
Look, Jay, I'm trying to cut the Home Office some slack, and the truth of it is, as things stand, I mean, it's getting very close. This guy's tour starts in 2 nights' time, Wednesday night, so it's less than 2 days away. I've been trying to get an answer from the Home Office. I'm not the only journalist who's been trying to do it since last Wednesday. Is this guy going to be allowed into the country or not? As of last Friday, they're telling me we'll send you an email as soon as we've made a decision. He's in our system, and we'll let you know. Suddenly today, we phoned them back today, we never comment on individual cases. So I don't know whether they're going to ban him or not, but I should know. You should know. The people should know. Why is this under a cloud? Why is this not being given the transparency that the British people deserve? Is this guy going to be allowed in or not?
They should have answered this within a day.
Absolutely.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
And let everyone know what's happening.
Yeah.
If it goes ahead and there are riots, I think Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer and all the other bloody useless mob should be done for incitement of violence and be banged up like all the other poor people were.
There won't be, of course, because they're in the government. But this is exactly you've hit the nail exactly on the head. This is my exact complaint. Now, as I say, it strikes me, I'm giving the Home Office, I'm not the only journalist, a perfect opportunity to turn around and say, we are not going to let this purveyor of hatred, this hate preacher, this whipper-up of violent thoughts into the country. We're going to be exactly the same as the other 29 Schengen European countries who've banned him. We're not going to let him in. And yet, they seem utterly reticent to tell me or you or anyone what their decision is. I'm beginning to think they're going to let him in.
Well, the thing is, we all know people can be radicalised online in their bedroom.
Yeah.
But if you get 1,000 people all together, it whips it up into a frenzy.
It does, absolutely.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, well, he's going to play, though, Jay. He's going to play, we worked it out to sort of 10,000 people.
Yes.
10 quid a ticket. He's going to do very nicely out of this.
He's not much of a human being, never mind anything else.
Yeah, well, he's a computer science PhD. He's got a lot of qualifications in computer science, but he's found a way to make more money, whipping up hatred.
Like a lot of intellectuals, no common sense, no brains.
Yeah, well, I don't know about this guy. He doesn't look. He looks like he just found a way of making money, but not a very nice way. Jay, really good call. Thank you very much for ringing. Let's quickly get another voice note in. Sarah, who wants to talk about the foreign aid wasteful spending on, for example, shrimp health in Bangladesh.
It makes my blood boil. I am a sole trader. I've got a small business with a limited income, and that's fine. I'm happy. I live within my means. But my outgoings have increased by 36% in the last year. My electricity bill alone is £700 from November to January this year so far because of the increases and increases. It's unsustainable. I cannot pass that on to my customer because I will price myself out of the market. And my standard of living is going down thanks to this government and the previous government, and I am sick of it. I am sick of seeing where my money goes. I'm so glad this is being exposed.
This is it. Very good. Excellent, Sarah. Thank you very much. I mean, you know, that's the other thing about this mad wokery. It all costs money. And it's affecting people like Sarah, people who are running small businesses. They're struggling to get by. They're struggling to survive. So all in all, this is an incredibly unsatisfactory situation. Quick note here from Andy in Manchester. He said, "This is the first time I've heard any of this speech by J.D. Vance, and my God, he said everything right. I hope that the penny drops and we see how wrong Labour is as a government and their ridiculous laws and negativity. We see what that is doing to the country and its people." That's right, their ridiculous laws. They're trampling on freedom. What was Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, when she came into power? What was her first move? It was to try to cancel the free speech on university campuses bill. So she tried to stop freedom of speech on university campuses. That was her first move. That's what these people think like. They're socialists. They hate freedom of speech. They want to control the narrative. They want to control what you think and what you're allowed to say, what the newspapers are allowed to say, what the television channels, the radio stations are allowed to say. And we can't let them dictate that, can we? Because we have freedom of speech. Before we go to break, let's listen to Rob on migrants.
I don't see why they can't just, if they're fit enough to cross the channel, they're fit enough to walk. And what they should do here is take them into detention centres, a few months training in the art of graffiti removing, road maintenance, stuff like that. Send them out to work when they're trained, 8 hours a day, and then they can have their keep. That's integrating them into society as well. Why can't they do that?
Well, Rob, I always like your WhatsApps, but I'm not going to agree with you there, because if you start letting them work and they'll get paid for that, they're pretty much here then, aren't they? Stop them working and then just deport them. That's what I would suggest. If you let them work, you're letting them stay, and that isn't the idea. That isn't the idea. But I respect your point, but I'm not going to go along with that. I think they should not be allowed to work. They should be returned, having broken our laws, by breaking into the country at the first possible opportunity. Let's go to break, take some more phone calls and messages after these messages.
Europe does need to be consulted. You can't just have this responsibility dumped on Europe. So I understand the agitation, but I also think you have to recognise that this is a serious attempt by the US president to solve a war that has scarred Europe for the past more than 1,000 days. And so in a sense, I think Keir Starmer is striking the right note by saying, well, look, we'd be prepared to contribute troops, but also saying it needs to be the right sort of deal, which is the key here. What would Ukraine be offered as part of a ceasefire deal?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We talked about Rachel Reeves and her career lies earlier. She's told a lot of fibs on her CV. A lot of people are quite annoyed about this. I mean, now it seems to be emerging that she may have left HBOS all those years ago, where she pretended she was an economist, but she wasn't. She was like manager of the complaints department or something. Rachel from accounts, basically. But anyway, it looks as if, or there's an allegation that she had to leave HBOS due to an expenses scandal involving her and a couple of other managers who were basically signing off stuff for each other. She denies this. She says she didn't know about an investigation. She said she was never asked any questions about it. But it seems a bit odd that we're hearing stories of a whistleblower coming forward. Other employees who were there at the time remember it very well. She's denying it. So John on the Isle of Coll says, if there were lawyers involved in her leaving, it couldn't have been clear-cut. I've never had to involve lawyers when I decided to leave a job. I just work my notice and leave. End of. The only thing is, John, we're not entirely sure that lawyers were involved. I mean, she says no. Brian Goodwin says, why doesn't someone ask her about the investigation in the House of Commons? Because she can't mislead MPs. Really, Brian? Really? I think she has been. They'll all mislead each other if they can get away with it. So good idea, but she'd probably wriggle out of it. You know what politicians are like. They're allergic to honesty. Quick couple more voice notes before Petri comes in and tells you what she's got lined up for your delectation from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. The first, they're both on Ukraine. This is Richard.
This business about committing British troops to Ukraine, it's fraught with potential disaster. The fact is that even if there's a peace deal done and a ceasefire, you've got people on both sides of the divide who will do anything to get at each other. They're not going to let this peace carry on. They want to carry on fighting for their own ends, and we're going to end up getting stuck in the middle. And I don't think anyone's really appreciated that. So we really need to think very carefully before we commit our troops. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to see a lot of body bags coming back.
Well, I think that's a good point. When they say peacekeeping, after a peace deal, I mean, that can often involve a lot of action that isn't very peaceful. So Keir Starmer recklessly seems to be committing our boys to fighting in Ukraine, potentially. And when he says we're going to send troops there, well, a lot of people say, what troops? Your budget, your defence budget is so low, we haven't really got any troops left. So it's just all cloud cuckoo land, really. Here's another one, all the way from Austria, actually. Mark, again on Ukraine.
What do the leaders from Europe think they are? That's why Trump is just negotiating with Putin alone, because they know they're going to it up. For example, just take the Foreign Ministry of Germany, Mrs. Baerbock. Totally ridiculous and hopeless person. And Zelensky, he just wants the money, nothing else. He's on shopping tour in Saudi Arabia anyway. Why is he down there? Just to mess everything up? It's just hopeless.
That's a view from Austria. Thank you, Mark. Some pretty forthright opinions there. Interesting. Let's go back to the phones. It's that time. It's time to talk to Tarquin. Hi, Tark.
Kevin, another brilliant show.
Thank you very much.
It really has been an absolute exception, and including Ben Habib. I mean, he's the best Prime Minister we haven't had so far, isn't he, Ben? I mean, he's brilliant.
Yeah, I know, and I hope he is a future Prime Minister as well. I wish we had more politicians like him, a man who talks honestly and tells it like it is. Unfortunately, we are in the hands of a bunch of shifty shysters who don't tell it like it is. Keir Starmer, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? I'll be the bridge between America and Europe. What is it that makes Keir think that Donald Trump doesn't think he's an idiot like the rest of them?
Well, I think he's delusional, isn't he? It's a psychosis he's suffering from, I think. I totally agree with you, Kevin. He seems to think that this Pax Americana, that it kind of still exists. I think he hasn't read The Room. I mean, that J.D. Vance speech, as you quite rightly said the other day.
Mesmerising, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those seminal speeches that will go down in history. That was a declaration of war against wokery. They just didn't get it, and the blubbering Bosch buffoon crying. What a wimp! Pathetic.
Exactly. You know, J.D. Vance is saying no more of this, and that guy starts weeping for the loss of his values. Yeah. Well, they're not the values of Germans, millions of Germans. They're not the value of millions of people across the EU continent. They're not the values of the people of Britain. They're the values of these woke, virtue-signalling halo polishers, idiot losers that run these failing countries, and J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, indeed Russia, Putin as well, and Zelensky to an extent. You know what? You lot, just have your stupid little summit in Paris, moan amongst yourselves. We haven't got any more time for your nonsense. We're sick of it. We're going to do things real from now on.
The great thing is J.D. Vance will be president for the next 8 years.
There's no doubt about it. Next president of the United States, I do believe. And he proved himself to be a brilliant man. That speech from start to finish was mesmerising. Very, very succinct. It was only 20 minutes or so.
Really?
It was only 20 minutes or so. And the left and the great and the good and the BBC are all saying, what a bizarre thing, what a weird thing that he turned round and... It wasn't bizarre, it wasn't weird. It was a ringing of the changes. America is not going to cooperate with a Europe that tramps on freedom of speech.
Absolutely. Keep up the good work, sir. You're doing a brilliant job.
Thanks for tuning in, Tarquin. Always good to talk to you, my friend Tarquin there from London. Let's go to Richard. He's in the Arsenal region of London, it says here. And you want to talk about Rachel Reeves, Richard? What would you like to say?
Well, I'm working on a new comedy musical, Kevin, called Porkygate. It's all about Rachel, of course, because they got poor old Boris on Partygate. As a schoolgirl, Rachel's favourite film was The Wizard of Oz. She didn't like Dorothy so much, but she liked the idea of the little guy sitting behind the curtain working a machine to make him look like he was a big, great big wizard.
Yeah. Well, that's it. But, you know, Rachel Reeves, I mean, we know she's lied on her CV. So she said she did 10 years as an economist in the Bank of England, and then people from the Bank of England said she wasn't here for 10 years. She's going, oh, yeah. Now you come to mention it was 6 years. And then it wasn't 6 years. It was 5 years and 3 months.
Well, she says she's an expert on tax matters, but she actually learned that from her great idol was Al Capone, of course. He was an expert on tax evasion, so she was called Val Capone.
Yeah, but of course he wasn't an expert on tax evasion, because that's the one thing he got nicked for, wasn't it? But Rachel Reeves lied, and it looks like it's all coming home to roost. I think she could be in trouble, Richard. Fingers crossed, because she's ruined the economy. We can't take too much more of that woman. Richard, good to talk to you, mate. Thanks very much for the call. Call me again, Richard, in Arsenal there. It's not Arsenal. I think it's like an area around Arsenal Football Club. What's it called? I can't remember. Anyway, Highbury, that's it. Right, she's in the studio. It's Petri Hoskin. Hi, Petri.
Hello there. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Europe's Ukraine summit, of course, the one to which Donald Trump was not invited because they've not been invited to his.
Yeah, but what's the point of their summit?
Well, we'll be talking about that later. And also, I will be talking about what we're prepared to give up in order to increase our defence budget. And are we prepared to give up and have cuts in order to increase our security?
Yeah, I mean, but we've got to... Basically, it's so strange that Starmer's going around, I'm really good friends with Trump. You know, he wants to increase our expenditure on defence to 5%. We've got 2.3% at the moment, and I'm not going to increase that. Well, how is that going to maintain his friendship with Starmer?
Even Donald Trump doesn't pay 5%. That's just a figure that's been thrown. Yeah.
3.38.
So if